The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and vanilla, Sarah's signature scent when she was stress baking. Flour dusted the countertops like fresh snow, and 3 trays of snickerdoodles cooled on wire racks by the window. She wiped her hands on her apron, leaving white streaks across the faded blue fabric, and reached for her phone as it buzzed against the marble. "Hey, sweetie," she answered, tucking the phone between her ear and shoulder as she continued rolling dough. "Mom." Her daughter Emily's voice sounded strained, careful. That particular tone that meant something uncomfortable was coming. "We need to talk about Thanksgiving." Sarah's hands stilled. "Okay. What's going on?" "So, you know how we only have 6 tickets to the dinner cruise? The one we booked for Thanksgiving on the harbor." Of course. Sarah had been looking forward to it for months. Emily and her husband Derek had made such a big deal about it. Their first real family Thanksgiving since moving to Seattle, something special to create new traditions. Sarah had already bought a new dress, deep burgundy with a flattering cut that made her feel elegant rather than invisible, the way she'd felt so often in the 3 years since Robert died. "Well, the thing is—" Emily paused, and Sarah could hear muffled voices in the background. "Derek and I were talking, and we realized that with the kids, that's 4 tickets already. And then there's Derek's mom." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sarah set down her rolling pin carefully, precisely, focusing on that small action to steady herself. "We gave your ticket to Derek's mom," Emily continued in a rush. "I'm so sorry, Mom, but the kids, Mia and Jackson, they're just so close to Grandma Linda right now. She sees them every day since she helps with pickup from school, and she does that thing where she lets them have ice cream before dinner, and they just love her so much. They've been asking for her constantly, and Derek really wanted his mom there, and I thought maybe you wouldn't mind too much because you could have Thanksgiving with Aunt Carol, couldn't you?" "She invited you, right?" Sarah stood frozen, the phone pressed against her ear, hearing the words but not quite processing them. Around her, the kitchen that had felt so warm moments ago now seemed stark and cold despite the oven's heat. "Mom? Are you there?" "I'm here." Her voice came out steady, which surprised her. Inside, something was cracking, a fissure spreading through her chest like ice breaking on a pond. "You understand, don't you? It's just that Linda is more involved with the kids right now, and they explicitly asked for her. I couldn't say no to my own children." "Your own children," Sarah thought. "But I'm your mother." "I understand," she heard herself say, those 2 words covering a chasm of hurt. "You're the best, Mom. I knew you'd get it. We'll do something special, just the 2 of us, I promise. Maybe lunch the week after." "Sure, honey. That sounds fine." "Great. Okay, I have to run. Jackson has soccer in 20 minutes. Love you." The line went dead before Sarah could respond. She stood there in her flour-dusted kitchen, surrounded by dozens of cookies she'd been baking for her grandchildren, and slowly set the phone down on the counter. The screen was smudged with butter and sugar. She stared at it, watching her reflection in the darkened glass, a 62-year-old woman in a silly apron, covered in flour, suddenly and completely displaced. The tears came without warning, hot and fast, streaming down her cheeks and dripping onto the counter. She pressed her palms flat against the marble, grounding herself, and took several shaking breaths. They love her more. The thought was a knife, sharp and cruel. Not just that they preferred Linda, that was somehow survivable, but that Emily had said it so casually, as if it were obvious, as if Sarah's presence was optional while Linda's was essential. She thought of all the hours she'd spent with Mia and Jackson when Emily and Derek first had them. The sleepless nights when Sarah drove across town at 2 a.m. because Emily was drowning in new mother exhaustion. The countless afternoons at the park, pushing swings until her arms ached. The skinned knees she'd bandaged, the tears she'd dried, the stories she'd read until her voice went hoarse. But that was when they lived in Portland, before the move to Seattle 2 years ago. Before Linda retired and became available for daily pickups and impromptu ice cream runs. Before Sarah became the grandmother who lived 3 hours away, who visited once a month if she was lucky, who called on FaceTime only to have the kids wave distractedly before running off to play. She hadn't realized how completely she'd been replaced. Sarah pulled off her apron with shaking hands and walked to the living room, sinking into Robert's old chair. She still thought of it as his, even after all this time. His reading glasses still sat on the side table, next to the mystery novel he'd been halfway through when the heart attack took him. She'd never been able to put them away. "What do I do, Robert?" she whispered to the empty room. The silence was her only answer. Sarah didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over. Each time, Emily's words cut deeper. The grandkids love her more. As if love were a competition, something that could be measured and compared, with Sarah coming up short. By dawn, she'd cycled through every emotion: hurt, anger, sadness, and a bone-deep exhaustion that had nothing to do with lack of sleep. She made coffee with mechanical precision, her movements automatic, and sat at the kitchen table as weak November sunlight filtered through the windows. The cookies were still on the cooling racks, now stale. She'd been planning to pack them up and drive to Seattle this weekend, surprise the kids. She laughed bitterly. What was the point? Her phone buzzed. A text from Emily. "Thanks again for being so understanding. You're amazing. Red heart." Sarah stared at the message, that cheerful heart emoji at the end. Did Emily really think a heart emoji made it better? Did she have any idea what she'd done? Another text followed. "By the way, can you still knit those sweaters for the kids' Christmas? Linda saw the one you made last year and wants to know if you could do matching ones." The audacity of it took Sarah's breath away. Linda wanted her to knit sweaters. Linda, who had her ticket, who had her place at the table, now wanted her labor too. For the first time in 3 years, since Robert's death had left her feeling fragile and uncertain, Sarah felt something other than grief or numbness. She felt angry. She picked up her phone and started typing, then stopped. Deleted the message. Started again. Stopped. What could she say that would make Emily understand? How could she explain that she'd been erased, replaced, rendered optional? Instead, she texted back, "I need some time to think about things. I'll call you later." She turned off her phone before Emily could respond. The house felt too quiet, too empty. Sarah stood and paced through the rooms, each one full of memories. The corner where Robert's desk had been, where he'd worked on his carpentry projects. The window seat where she'd nursed Emily as a baby. The marks on the doorframe tracking Emily's height through the years. This house had been meant to be full of family, of grandchildren running through the halls, of holiday dinners around the big oak table. Instead, it was a museum of the past, and Sarah was its sole curator. She found herself in the spare bedroom she'd converted into a craft room. Shelves lined with yarn, a quilting frame in the corner, the half-finished sweater for Jackson laid out on the table. She picked it up, running her fingers over the soft wool, the careful stitches. Hours of work, hours of love woven into every row. And for what? So Linda could request matching ones? Sarah set the sweater down and walked to her closet. In the back, wrapped in tissue paper, was the burgundy dress. She pulled it out, held it up to herself in the mirror. She'd been so excited to wear it, to feel beautiful and included, to be part of her family's celebration. Now it seemed like a costume for a play she was no longer in. 3 days passed before Sarah turned her phone back on. The messages flooded in, 17 from Emily, ranging from confused to worried to irritated. 5 from Carol, her older sister. 2 from old friends checking in about Thanksgiving plans. Sarah ignored them all except Carol's. She called her sister, and Carol answered on the first ring. "Jesus, Sarah, I've been worried sick. What's going on? Can I come stay with you for a few days?" There was a pause. "Of course. When?" "Today. I'll make up the guest room." 4 hours later, Sarah was sitting at Carol's kitchen table in Astoria, a cup of chamomile tea cooling between her hands. The Pacific Ocean roared beyond the windows, gray and wild under an overcast sky. Carol sat across from her, 65 years old and sharp as ever, her steel-gray hair cut in a no-nonsense bob. "Tell me everything," Carol said. Sarah did. The words poured out, the phone call, the casual cruelty of Emily's explanation, the replacement, the erasure, the sweater request. She told Carol about the sleepless nights, about the growing distance she'd felt since the move to Seattle, about how she'd tried so hard to stay connected but felt herself becoming invisible, unnecessary. "And the worst part," Sarah finished, her voice cracking, "is that Emily doesn't even realize she hurt me. She thinks I'm being understanding. She thinks we're fine." Carol was quiet for a long moment, her hands wrapped around her own mug. Then she spoke, her voice gentle but firm. "Do you remember when you were in high school and you made the varsity volleyball team?" Sarah blinked at the apparent non sequitur. "What?" "Just answer. Do you remember?" "Of course. It was my junior year." "And do you remember that I didn't come to your games?" "Not one, the entire season." Sarah frowned. "You were in college. You were busy." "I was 3 hours away at Portland State. I could have come home some weekends. But I didn't, because I was wrapped up in my own life, my own friends, my own drama. I thought you'd understand, that you didn't really need me there because Mom and Dad were there." Carol's eyes were sad. "It wasn't until years later that Mom told me how much it hurt you. How you'd scan the stands for me every game. How you'd come home disappointed every time I wasn't there." "Carol." "I didn't know, Sarah. Not because you didn't matter, but because I was young and self-absorbed and couldn't see past my own immediate world. And when you finally told me, years later, do you know what I felt?" "What?" "Terrible. Absolutely terrible. Because I'd hurt you without even realizing it, and I couldn't go back and fix it. All I could do was apologize and try to do better going forward." Sarah stared at her sister. "You think Emily doesn't know she hurt me?" "I think Emily is 34 years old with 2 kids under 10, a full-time job, and a husband who's probably been lobbying for his mother. I think she's drowning in logistics and trying to keep everyone happy, and she took the path of least resistance." Carol reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "That doesn't make it okay. But it does make it understandable." She said the kids love Linda more. Which was an incredibly hurtful thing to say, even if she didn't mean it that way. "But Sarah," Carol squeezed her hand, "you need to tell her that. You need to tell her she hurt you, that this isn't okay, that you matter too." "I don't want to be a burden. I don't want to be the needy mother who—" "Stop." Carol's voice was sharp. "You're not needy for wanting to be included in your own family. You're not a burden for having feelings. And if you don't speak up, if you just swallow this and pretend it's fine, 2 things will happen. First, you'll resent Emily forever. Second, Emily will never have the chance to make it right." Sarah felt tears welling up again. "What if she doesn't care? What if I tell her and she just dismisses it? Then you'll know where you stand, and you can make decisions from there." "But Sarah, I've known Emily her whole life. She's not cruel. She's thoughtless sometimes, yes, but not cruel. Give her a chance to be better." They sat in silence, the ocean's roar filling the space. Finally, Sarah nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." Sarah returned home the next day, but it took her 3 more days to work up the courage to call Emily. She rehearsed what she wanted to say, writing notes and discarding them, pacing her kitchen floor until she'd probably worn a path in the tile. When she finally picked up the phone, her hands were shaking. Emily answered immediately. "Mom." "Oh my God, are you okay? You disappeared and I was so worried and you weren't answering and I thought maybe something happened." "Emily." Sarah's voice was steady, stronger than she felt. "I need to talk to you about Thanksgiving." "Oh." There was a pause. Is this about you being upset? Because, Mom, I really thought you understood. Emily, please. Just listen. Something in Sarah's tone must have gotten through because Emily went quiet. Sarah took a breath. When you called and told me you were giving my ticket to Linda, it hurt me. It hurt me deeply. And when you said it was because the grandkids love her more, it felt like you were telling me I'd been replaced. That I wasn't important enough to include. That my presence was optional. Mom, that's not. I didn't mean. Please, let me finish. Sarah's voice wavered but held. I know I don't see the kids as often as Linda does. I know I live farther away. I know she does school pickup and I can't. But Emily, I'm your mother. I'm their grandmother. And I love them so much it physically hurts sometimes. Being told I'm not wanted at a family celebration because someone else is more convenient, it makes me feel invisible. Disposable. She could hear Emily breathing on the other end of the line. When your father died, Sarah continued, her voice breaking now, I lost my partner, my best friend, my whole world. And I've been trying so hard to rebuild a life that feels meaningful, to stay connected to you and the kids even though you're 3 hours away. I thought I mattered. I thought I was important to you. And then in one phone call, I found out I'm not. I'm the grandmother you can skip. The one whose feelings don't need to be considered. Mom. Emily's voice was thick with tears. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't think. No, you didn't. You didn't think about how it would feel to be erased from your family's celebration. You didn't think about what it would do to me to hear that my grandchildren prefer someone else. You didn't think about me at all. You're right. Emily was crying now, openly. You're absolutely right. Oh God, Mom, I'm so sorry. Derek kept pushing for his mom, and I was so stressed about the logistics, and you're always so understanding about everything, and I just thought, I don't know what I thought, that it would be okay because we could celebrate another time. But that's not the same, is it? No, Sarah said softly. It's not. I've been a terrible daughter. No, you've been thoughtless. There's a difference. There was a long silence. Then Emily spoke again, her voice small. I don't know how to fix this. The tickets are non-refundable and they're assigned, and Linda already changed her plans. I'm not asking you to uninvite Linda, Sarah interrupted. I'm asking you to understand why this hurt me. I'm asking you to see me, Emily. To remember that I'm a person with feelings, not just someone who will always understand when she gets pushed aside. I see you, Mom. I do. And I'm so sorry. Emily took a shaky breath. Can we start over? Not with Thanksgiving, I know that's done, but with everything else? Can I try to be better? Sarah closed her eyes, feeling something loosen in her chest. Yes. But Emily, I need you to really try. I need you to include me, not just when it's convenient. I need you to think about my feelings before making decisions that affect me. I need you to help the kids stay connected to me, even when Linda is the easier choice. I will. I promise I will. Emily was openly sobbing now. Mom, I love you so much. I never wanted to hurt you. I know, sweetheart. I know. They talked for another hour, really talked, the way they hadn't in years. Emily shared how overwhelmed she'd been, how guilty she felt about the move, how she'd been leaning on Linda because it was easy and convenient. Sarah shared how lonely she'd been since Robert died, how much she missed being needed, how frightened she was of becoming irrelevant to her own family. By the end of the call, both had cried themselves out, but something had shifted. A bridge had been rebuilt, or maybe built for the first time with the right foundations. Thanksgiving morning dawned clear and bright. Sarah woke in her own bed, in her quiet house, and for a moment, the hurt threatened to overwhelm her again. Today was the dinner cruise. Right now, Her family was getting ready without her. She lay there for a while, letting herself feel it. Not pushing it away, not pretending it was fine, just acknowledging, this hurts. I'm allowed to hurt. Then she got up and made coffee. Carol had invited her to Astoria, but Sarah had declined. I need to prove to myself that I can be okay alone, she'd explained. Carol understood. Sarah spent the morning slowly, deliberately. She went for a walk along the river trail near her house, watching the water flow past, steady and eternal. She came home and made herself a proper breakfast, something she rarely did, with scrambled eggs and toast and fresh fruit. She put on music, something jazzy and instrumental, and pulled out her knitting. The half-finished sweater for Jackson sat on the table. She looked at it for a long moment, then picked it up and continued working. Not because Linda wanted matching ones. Not because she felt obligated. But because she wanted to, because the act of creating something with her own hands soothed her, because the sweater was an expression of love regardless of whether anyone else understood that. Around noon, her phone buzzed. A FaceTime call from Emily. Sarah hesitated, then answered. Emily's face filled the screen, and behind her, Sarah could see they were on the boat, the Seattle harbor visible through large windows. Mia and Jackson were in the frame too, wearing matching outfits that Sarah recognized. She'd sent them last month. "Grandma!" Jackson shouted, his 5-year-old voice crackling through the speaker. "Hi, sweetheart," Sarah said, her throat tight. "Mom wanted to call," Emily said, her eyes red-rimmed. "We wanted you to be part of the day, even if you can't be here." Sarah saw Linda in the background, looking uncomfortable. "Grandma, look." Mia, 7 years old and missing her 2 front teeth, held up a bread roll. "They have rolls shaped like turkeys." Despite everything, Sarah laughed. "That's wonderful, honey." They talked for a few minutes, the kids chattering about the boat and the food and everything they could see. Then Emily took the phone and walked to a quieter corner. "I can't stop thinking about our conversation," Emily said quietly. "Being here, I keep thinking about you at home alone, and it's killing me. This was supposed to be about family, and I left you out." "I'm okay," Sarah said, and was surprised to find she meant it. "I'm not happy about it, but I'm okay. I'm going to do better, Mom. Starting with Christmas. You're coming here, and you're staying at least a week, and we're going to make up for this. If I have to physically tie the kids down to spend time with you, I will." Sarah smiled. "I don't think that will be necessary. I love you, Mom. I really, really love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." After they hung up, Sarah sat with her phone in her lap, feeling something she hadn't expected. Peace. Not happiness. She wasn't happy about missing Thanksgiving, but a quiet, settled sense that she'd done the right thing by speaking up. That she'd reclaimed her own dignity. Around 4 o'clock, Sarah was in the kitchen, having decided to make herself a small Thanksgiving dinner anyway, a Cornish game hen, roasted vegetables, the works, when her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone. Carol was in Astoria, Emily was on the cruise, her friends all had their own celebrations. She opened the door to find Linda standing on her porch. Sarah blinked in surprise. "Linda." Derek's mother stood there in her nice Thanksgiving dress, holding a casserole dish, looking distinctly uncomfortable. She was a petite woman, barely 5'2", with carefully dyed blonde hair and a smile that usually came easily. Today, she wasn't smiling. "Sarah," Linda said, "can I come in?" "Of course." Sarah stepped back, bewildered. They went to the kitchen, and Linda set the casserole dish on the counter. "It's sweet potato casserole," she said. "I know it's your favorite. Emily mentioned it once." Sarah stared at her. "Linda, what are you doing here?" "The cruise. I left early." Linda's hands twisted together. "I told them I had a migraine coming on," which wasn't entirely untrue. "Derek drove me back to shore." "I don't understand." Linda took a breath. Emily called me 3 days ago, really upset. She told me about your conversation, about how much she'd hurt you, about the ticket situation. And Sarah, I had no idea. When Derek told me there was an extra ticket, I just thought, I don't know what I thought. I didn't think about whose ticket it was. I didn't think about you at all. She looked miserable. But I should have. You're Mia and Jackson's grandmother. You're Emily's mother. And I helped push you out of your own family's celebration. Sarah didn't know what to say. The thing is, Linda continued, I was so excited to be included, to be wanted, that I didn't stop to consider what it meant that there was suddenly a spare ticket. I should have asked. I should have checked. I should have made sure it wasn't coming at someone else's expense. She met Sarah's eyes. I should have made sure it wasn't coming at your expense. Linda, you didn't know. I should have known. And more than that, once I got on that boat today and saw how guilty Emily felt, how wrong the whole thing was, I realized I couldn't enjoy it. How could I? Knowing that my being there meant you weren't? That you were home alone on Thanksgiving while I took your place. Linda's eyes were watery now. I don't have many people in my life, Sarah. My ex-husband left years ago, my son is my whole world, and those grandkids, they're everything to me. But that doesn't mean I should take what's yours. That doesn't make it okay. Sarah felt her own eyes filling. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I wanted to bring you this, because everyone should have something special on Thanksgiving, and I wanted you to know you're not forgotten. The two women stood in Sarah's kitchen, both crying now. Then, without planning it, Sarah stepped forward and hugged Linda. The other woman stiffened in surprise, then hugged back fiercely. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Thank you for seeing me. When they pulled apart, Linda wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. Lord, look at us. Two old women crying in a kitchen on Thanksgiving. We're not old, Sarah said automatically, and they both laughed. Listen, Linda said, I know this is presumptuous, but I brought enough sweet potato casserole for an army, and I saw you have a Cornish hen in the oven, and I'm not going back to an empty house, and you shouldn't be alone. Stay, Sarah said immediately. Please stay. They spent Thanksgiving together. Two grandmothers, two women who loved the same grandchildren, who had been positioned as rivals but who chose, in that moment, to be something else. Something better. They cooked together, Linda helping with the vegetables while Sarah prepared the hen. They set the table with Sarah's nice china, the set she'd inherited from her mother. They opened a bottle of wine, a good one, because why not, and toasted to second chances. Over dinner, they talked. Really talked. Linda shared about her divorce, about the loneliness of retirement, about her fear of being unwanted. Sarah shared about Robert's death, about rebuilding a life alone, about her own fear of irrelevance. I think, Linda said at one point, swirling her wine, we've both been scared of the same thing. Being unnecessary. Being forgotten. Yes, Sarah agreed quietly. Yes. But here's the thing I'm learning, maybe too late in life, Linda continued. We're not in competition. There's enough love for all of us. The kids can love both of us. Emily can need both of us. It doesn't have to be either or. I think I've been seeing it as competition too, Sarah admitted. Seeing you as the replacement grandmother instead of the additional grandmother. How about we make a pact? Linda raised her glass. No more competing. No more taking each other's places. We're both grandmothers to those kids, and that means we're on the same team. Sarah clinked her glass against Linda's. Same team. And if Derek ever tries to pull something like this again, we'll both kick his ass. Sarah laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. Deal. 6 weeks later, Sarah stood in Emily and Derek's living room in Seattle, watching the chaos of Christmas morning unfold. Mia and Jackson were destroying wrapping paper with a focused intensity only children could muster, and the room was a storm of ribbons and bows and shouts of delight. Sarah had been there for 4 days already, staying in their guest room, and true to her word, Emily had made sure they spent real time together. Not just logistics and quick hellos, but actual time. They'd baked cookies together, just Sarah and the kids. They'd gone to a holiday market. They'd read stories before bed. Yesterday, Emily had taken Sarah aside. "I've been thinking about what you said. About feeling invisible, about being pushed aside. And I realized I do it in other ways too, not just with tickets, but with time and attention and including you in decisions. I want to change that." "You're already changing it," Sarah had said, gesturing to the house around them, to the days they'd spent together. "Not enough. I want to be intentional about it." So, Emily had pulled out her phone. "I made a calendar. Once a month, you come here or we come there. Not just holidays, regular times. And twice a week, we do video calls where I make sure the kids actually talk to you, not just wave and run away. And I'm going to text you the normal stuff, what the kids did at school, funny things they said, all of it. I want you to feel like you're part of our daily life, not just someone we see at holidays." Sarah had cried then, happy tears this time. Now, on Christmas morning, Linda arrived mid-present opening. She came bearing gifts and the smell of cinnamon rolls, and the kids shrieked with delight. "Grandma Linda!" Jackson launched himself at her. "Hey, kiddo!" Linda hugged him, then looked up and met Sarah's eyes across the room. She smiled. Sarah smiled back. They spent the day together, both grandmothers, Emily and Derek, the kids. It was chaotic and loud and messy, with too much sugar and too much excitement and too much wrapping paper everywhere. It was perfect. At one point, Sarah and Linda found themselves in the kitchen together, loading the dishwasher while the others watched a movie in the living room. "You know what I figured out?" Linda said, rinsing a plate. "I was so desperate to be needed that I didn't care if it meant taking your place. That was wrong. We both made mistakes," Sarah said. "We both let ourselves be positioned as rivals instead of allies." "Well, no more." Linda shut the dishwasher and turned to face Sarah. "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad we're both here. Those kids are lucky to have 2 grandmothers who love them." "They are, aren't they?" Sarah said, smiling. Emily appeared in the doorway, watching them. "You 2 okay in here?" "We're perfect," Linda and Sarah said in unison, then laughed. Emily's eyes were bright. "Good. Because I was thinking, next Thanksgiving, we should do it here, all of us. A real family dinner. No boats, no limited tickets, just everyone together." "I'll bring the sweet potato casserole," Linda said. "And I'll make my pumpkin pie," Sarah added. "Deal." Emily came and hugged them both. "I love you guys. Both of you." Later that night, after the kids were in bed and Linda had gone home and Derek was snoring on the couch, Emily and Sarah sat in the kitchen with mugs of tea, the house finally quiet. "I'm glad you spoke up," Emily said softly. "When you called and told me I hurt you. I'm glad you didn't just swallow it and pretend it was fine." "I almost did," Sarah admitted. "I almost just accepted it and moved on. I'm so glad you didn't, because it made me look at everything differently. It made me realize I'd been taking you for granted, assuming you'd always be there and always understand. But that's not fair. You deserve better." "You're doing better," Sarah said, squeezing her daughter's hand. "This week has been wonderful." "It's not just a week, Mom. It's forever. You're my mother. You're their grandmother. You're not optional, and I'm sorry I ever made you feel like you were." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their tea, the Christmas tree lights twinkling in the living room beyond. "Mom," Emily said after a while, Do you think Dad would be proud of how we handled this? Sarah thought about Robert, about his steady presence, his kindness, his way of pushing people to be their best selves. I think he'd be proud that we talked about it honestly, that we didn't let it fester, that we chose each other even when it was hard. I miss him, Emily whispered. Me too, honey. Every day. They sat together in the warm kitchen, mother and daughter, connected by love and honesty and the hard work of actually showing up for each other. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the world in white. The following Thanksgiving, Sarah's house was full. Emily and Derek and the kids had arrived the day before. Linda came early Thanksgiving morning, her arms full of dishes. Carol drove over from Astoria with her husband Tom. Even some of Sarah's old friends dropped by in the afternoon. The big oak table that had sat empty for so long groaned under the weight of turkey and stuffing and casseroles and pies. Mia and Jackson ran through the halls, their laughter filling spaces that had been silent for too long. Sarah stood in the kitchen, watching everyone, feeling her heart might burst. Linda was teaching Mia how to make gravy. Emily and Carol were setting the table together, arguing good-naturedly about the proper way to fold napkins. Derek was entertaining Jackson with some kind of complicated story involving dinosaurs. This was what she'd needed. Not just to be included, but to be essential. Not just to be present, but to be valued. Grandma Sarah. Jackson came running into the kitchen. Grandma Linda says you make the best pumpkin pie in the whole world. Is that true? Sarah laughed. I don't know about the whole world, but I make a pretty good pie. Can I help? Of course you can. She lifted him up to the counter, and together they started mixing ingredients. Through the doorway, she could see her family, her home full of love and noise and life. Linda looked over and gave her a thumbs up. Emily caught her eye and mouthed, "Love you." This time, when Sarah cried, they were tears of pure joy. "Grandma, why are you crying?" Jackson asked, concerned. "Because I'm happy, sweetheart. Because I'm so happy." And she was. The end of the story, Sarah realized, wasn't about the ticket at all. It was about finding her voice, reclaiming her place, and building something better than what had been broken. It was about learning that love wasn't a competition and that speaking up wasn't selfish. It was about family, not the perfect, easy version, but the real, complicated, messy, beautiful version where people hurt each other and then did the hard work of making it right. Most of all, it was about remembering that she mattered. That she'd always mattered. And that being understanding didn't mean accepting less than she deserved. As she stood in her crowded kitchen on Thanksgiving Day, surrounded by the people she loved and who loved her back, Sarah finally felt whole again.